Hi, I'm Heerhugowaard from DTV Capacity Building in the Netherlands. Each last Thursday of the month, I organize a webinar about 5 secrets to creating successful bicycle infrastructure. The edition of 24th of September was a special edition. We teamed up with the Dutch and Flemish city network called CIVINET Netherlands Flanders. CIVINET is part of CIVITAS. It is the European Commission's initiative on sustainable urban mobility. Have a look at CIVITAS.eu for further information. During the special edition of the webinar, I had 2 inspiring guest speakers from the CIVINET network, the city of Antwerp and the city of Heerhugowaard. The first presenting a successful approach to motivate employees to start cycling or to cycle more. The second one, presenting the approach to creating the longest bicycle street in the Netherlands. The remainder of this clip contains the recording of the city of Heerhugowaard.
My name is Dick van Veen, and even though I'm not working for the city of Heerhugowaard, I'm a consultant for them, together with Martien Ippel, who's also here in the chat room. We would like to present on the bicycle network and provide you with a design example of one of the main corridors in that network in Heerhugowaard. Starting off, who am I then? I'm an independent urban designer and traffic engineer. I have been working with the city of Heerhugowaard for, I think, the last 4 or 5 years. Worked a lot in Holland, Amsterdam mostly, but also in Europe and North America. But that's enough promotion. Let's skip to Heerhugowaard. Heerhugowaard might not be as familiar to you guys as the city of Antwerp, so it needs a little bit more introduction. It is a new town. It is a town which grew from almost nothing after the Second World War to 56,000 inhabitants right now. It is more or less glued together to Alkmaar, north of Amsterdam in North Holland. Heerhugowaard has been developing super rapidly from meadowland to more or less mediocre density city, suburban for some of you. And it's built in a polder, so meadow after meadow. And that's really important for the network, for the car network and for the bike network, as you will see. Worth mentioning is that the city has always been pretty innovative in the way they build, so connecting to EU programs, and one of the results of that was the Sustainable Neighborhood of City of the Sun, which is pretty prominent in the aerial photograph nowadays. As you will see, it's this rectangle over there. Originally a polder, and a polder in Holland means that it's a meadowland made of peat, and peat is very soft. You can't do a lot with it. You sink away. So you're surrounded with dikes, and you keep draining the water level until you get dry feet. And if you get dry feet, you can build on it. That's why you have to keep draining. And originally, this polder was made accessible from it was peat, and then it became a lake after it drowned, and then it was drained again in 1650 something. And this is interesting because the engineers of that time, they used this grid-like fashion. So a lot of polder cities have this have a grid-like network, which is pretty uncommon in old medieval towns where everything's like radial and meandering. And especially this center line running straight through the polder, which is conveniently called the middle road, the Middenweg, was the base from where they more or less excavated and made new land. So all of the parcels were perpendicular to that line. And we still see that line. If you put the north in the north, you get this prominently in the build up, in the build out of the town, growing along the Middenweg, getting side street to side street next to it, ultimately getting too big for accessibility. So you get a tangential road on the western and tangential road on the east side, called the West-tangent, and the Oost-tangent, the East tangential and the West tangential road. Not that creative, but it works. And then you got a three parallel routes: the east, center, middle, and right west lane, picking up the car traffic. And ultimately that became too dangerous, so the center lane, the middenweg, was cut off for through traffic, only accessible for local traffic, for buses, a lot of buses, and a lot of bikes, connecting to the city of Alkmaar, to the train stations, and then to the rest of the Netherlands. So this inner corridor became really, really important. The rest of the bike network, as you can see, still is relatively dense. I'll skip this one. The bike network is relatively dense in the sense that a bike network has a mesh width which is way finer in grain than a car network. Cars come in from the outside and pop into the different neighborhoods, and bikes go through the center. Bikes have more interconnectivity, and they need that. And ultimately, it's a this is the Google map showing you the separated bike lanes. It doesn't mean that in an international context, you might see that as the only routes available for cycling, and that's not true, because every street, every little wide alleyway, street should be safe and cannot be unsafe. But these are the main corridors for like commuting or faster or more direct cycling. The conditions Taya mentioned in the beginning: safety, directness, coherence. That's what you all see over here. Well, comfort and attractiveness are part of that network as well. And comfort and attractiveness on this middle road, which is super central, which is super important for the town, they kind of were mediocre at that time. At the same time, it's still super important, because if you look at the regional network, you see that this line coming from Heerhugowaard connects all the way through the city of Alkmaar to the south to other towns. So in this regional bike network for longer distances, commuting and recreational use, all of the conditions for that local link should be met. So ultimately, I'm going to focus in design on that link. I'm not going to explain the whole design, because previously we made a pretty neat video for that, and I'm going to show you that instead. But to give you a little bit of background, in those medieval times, this was the view of the middle road, middenweg. So basically a gravel road with trees aligned. But as we all know, as cars pop up and eat up all the space we have, it turned into this asphalt right up to the trunks of the streets of the trees. Bike lanes which were so narrow that hardly one person at a time could cycle there, let alone two, not fulfilling any standards whatsoever. It was pretty lethal at the time, with a lot of incidents before automatic retractable bollards came in and banned through traffic for cars. But still, with 8 buses per hour, that means more than 100 buses per day who pass each other as well on a 5.5 meter road, which is actually more like 5 because of the encroachment of the green. Everything was just too narrow, and separation was impossible anymore. So something had to be done. And that's where I was brought in 5 years ago, together with Heerhugowaard and a lot of stakeholders. We experimented with the idea of a bicycle street, which was previously used within neighborhoods or within towns and centers to prioritize bikes on a streetscape. But this was a stretched 3 kilometers long route from the center to a neighboring town, which kind of became, from suburban, it became kind of rural in its feeling before it connected to Alkmaar again, meaning that a bicycle street within its normal conditions would be stretched. And it doubled as well with the condition of a major bus route. And buses and bikes might be best friends in a trip chain, but they're not best friends in one shared layout. And therefore, we had a lot of discussions with residents, schools, traffic safety boards, bicycle unions, but also with the transport companies on how to combine the both. And the bicycle street was ultimately designed in such a way that people were nudged in their behavior to use it in the right way. So the design is tweaked with a rumbling edge in the center, where overtaking was kind of discouraged, because then you would have to cross that rumbling edge, or as it fits neatly in between the wheelbase of a bus might just stay in the center, which allowed it for bikes two-way and one-way onward to pass over and then prevent a lot of dangerous overtakings. So without further ado, I'll pop over to this YouTube, and I think I got it already here. It will work like this. I'll provide you a link later on in the chat. But this
Here you see the road called the Middenweg, located in the town Heerhugowaard, the Netherlands. For centuries, the Middenweg has cut straight through the surrounding rural polo landscape. However, the southern section of the road was in need of restoration. Before Mobicon's intervention, the road surface was bad. There were traffic safety conflicts, and even the trees beside the road were deteriorating due to their age. Something had to be done, and the choice fell on a rigorous redesign of the road, including the lowering and widening of the road and its shoulders. The question which remained was, which design would fit the task? What design is best for the 325 cars, 1,200 cyclists, and 8 buses per hour that use this road on a daily basis? How should the adjacent houses, green spaces, and water bodies be incorporated? And what design meets the important historical context of the road? Mobicon helped design a new road layout which incorporates all current demands. Dick van Veen, senior designer at Mobicon, worked out the design and supervised the participation process. Together with residents and local entrepreneurs, he worked towards an innovative road design where cyclists, pedestrians, buses and cars all have their own allocated space on the road. Within this project, participation has resulted in a widely supported redesign.
The Middenweg is really important for cyclists as it is the most direct and central route towards the biggest city of Alkmaar. But it's also a main bus route. It's straight and direct and runs centrally through the area it's going through. And because neither a separated bike path or rerouting the bus was an option, this proved to be the main design challenge. We really wanted to improve the conditions for cyclists. They should be top priority. So instead of having a car route with minimalistic bike lanes, we went for a design with a super wide cycle path on which cars were only allowed in as guests. These projects, innovative as they are, really can't be designed top-down. They have to have stakeholders' involvement. For that, we got a design group together who actively discussed desired traffic behavior and went on drafting several designs. The stakeholder group involved residents, primary schools, business owners, the bicycle union, and even the transit company. Middenweg Zuid was literally the first line on the map of the 17th century when the engineers and surveyors changed this area from a lake towards this new countryside. And the artist used that fact to visualize the original surveying line on the street itself. And he changed my traffic-oriented road markings into these innovative ruler markings. He then went on to change the original level of scale, pace of foot, towards this innovative new pace of pedal. So you could highlight the function as a bicycle street. And with that, we integrate the identity with the traffic and the urban function of the road itself into a nice coherent picture. So what I've got to say is that I designed this for when I was still working at the company called Mobicon, which is a great company, but I'm happy it didn't become. Don't forget to put YouTube up, but it will run the next one. And with that, I think Heerhugowaard and me would like to conclude this story about bike networks and the design of the Middenweg.
Well, thank you for this presentation. Very practical, quite some challenges that were overcome by, well, both this inspirational design and the city of Heerhugowaard. Also, a lot of stakeholders that were involved, and that process was also necessary to come to this solution. I'm really also again here would like to open the floor for some questions from the audience. So feel free to open up your mic and share the questions or observations or insights.
I would have a question. I was wondering whether you received any pushback from any of the stakeholders about the fact it would be less accessible for cars, and I was wondering how you dealt with that.
I can answer that. Martien is here as well. I might answer this one.
Yeah, I can answer it as well if you want to, Dick.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The road was already closed for cars before we started this project. So that was about, I think, 10 years before, when we put up a second bollard for cars on the south end of this part. And 10 years before that, we already put up a bollard on the northern part. So only local residents have access to their houses on the Middenweg, but all the others have to use the new infrastructure.
So ultimately, there were about 300 to 325 cars per day, which is not super much within that area. Besides 100 buses and a lot of bikes. So what we know, the main, I think the main opposing party was the transit company, obviously, because it's a bike route, but at the same time they see it as their main bus corridor, and any delay to a bus route is a money problem usually. There's big tenders with big contracts set out, in which they have to make up travel times, and if they won't make that up, they will lose money, or etc. So we had to come up with arguments where we'd say the bus will not be delayed or not be delayed. They wouldn't accept just driving 10 kilometers per hour behind some cyclists who just didn't want to go to the side for him to pass. So we had to come up with something else, and ultimately, after a lot of discussions, this design kind of provided overtaking possibilities for them in a safe way, and that kind of helped them to come along.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Perhaps some other questions that have risen in the meantime. Okay. Well, also wondering, Martin, did you support this infrastructure development also with further cycling stimulation projects or promotion campaigns like we've seen in Antwerp?
No, wish our board was into such things, but no, we did not. Our cycling share is already very high, but yeah, we are planning to improve the infrastructure. That's the most. That's the point where we focus on, and not more in infrastructural ways.
Yeah, and I guess the participation and the stimulation also was focused on the existing users, like people living there and working there. For instance, the tree choice was made free for people who live there, and the cultural heritage thing was developed together with them, just to ingrain it, to connect the street to the surroundings instead of just building a autonomous bike routes and then promote it for cycling. So there's more than just cycling; it's public space as well.
And the road already has 2,500 cyclists per day, which is quite a high number in this area.
Okay, thanks for that. In the meantime, Jacob has, he's looking forward to receiving the video URL, Dick. So it will be included in, it's included in the presentation, but Dick is already sharing it. Thanks for that swift follow-up. Perhaps one final question.
It's in the chat box right now, the link.
Thanks for that.